I saw a larger opportunity, and the idea just started flying out of my mouth. I ended up pitching him on a collector's edition set of 4 identical Kiss covers, one for each of us. The Kiss fans will want to buy all 4 of them, I said. When the 4 solo covers of Spin came out, I brought them into rehearsals at Cobo Hall in Detroit before our first performance to show Ace and Peter that I was pushing the band, not myself. As long as I live, I'll never forget Ace's reaction. He picked up his solo cover and said, "I fucking hate this. This sucks. I'm leaving the band." And he walked out. He later came back calmer and explained that he didn't like his photograph. By the end of the day, he was looking around and asking us if we really thought his picture looked okay. Subsequently, I learned that Guccione had printed 60% Gene Simmons covers and 25% Paul Stanley covers. The remaining 15% was divided between Ace and Peter covers. It was not the equal printing everyone thought it was. "If you walk out that door now, I'm leaving the band." The first leg of our reunion tour lasted 193 shows and ran over 2 years. It was a triumph in every way. At the end of 1997, we were playing in New Jersey, and Dick Clark, ever the gentleman, asked us if we would ring in the new year. "Fuck you!" We had become the #1 touring band. #2 was our good friend Garth Brooks. The reaction was so tremendous that for the Millennium New Year's Eve, Dick Clark decided to rebroadcast the footage. For all the wonderful feeling that passed between the band and the fans, the old problems were cropping up again. You think people will change. You hope they will change. You expect them to mature, to learn from their mistakes. But they don't. Ace would constantly ask questions about the number of people showing up at the concerts. 13 for a dozen. These would be concerts in places we had played before, and the halls and stadiums hadn't changed in size. But he wanted to know whether anybody was hiding any tickets. Astonishingly, Ace was oblivious to the fact that he had a flat deal. If nobody showed up, or if it sold out, he still got the same amount of money for each show he played. If he didn't play, he didn't get paid. I kept repeating that to him every time he asked. He only said, "Awk." I didn't understand why he was agonizing over it. Then I found out that he wasn't just asking me. He would ask Doc, our manager, how many people showed up tonight. And Doc would say, "Oh, I don't know, maybe 15,000 people. Then Ace would produce a piece of paper from the concert hall, a schematic that showed the seating arrangements. On the bottom, it would say, "Capacity, 19,000. And he would bring me the paper and shake his head and say, "See? More lies." Keep in mind it said capacity. But it was just like Ace to ignore that, or not to know what capacity meant. It seemed as if he didn't understand the difference between capacity and attendance, or that because our stage show was so big, we had to kill 3,000 or 4,000 seats. Peter, for his part, retained a frustrating inability to understand press coverage. Articles would appear about the band, and Peter would be furious at me. He'd come up and confront me and say, "What the fuck did you say about me here?" I would take a look, thinking that maybe I had been misquoted. I hadn't. Before the interview, the reporter had written his introduction, and maybe he would mention that Peter had known drug problems or had been bankrupt. This was the writer's voice, not mine, but to Peter it was the same thing. Now that the band had reunited and I was spending more time with Peter and Ace, I was starting to see the effect 20 years of heavy drug and alcohol use had had. Ace had lost much of his memory. He has been quoted in magazines and has said directly to me that he literally doesn't remember entire decades of his life. I would like to think of that as a rock and roll exaggeration, but I have seen much evidence of memory loss. For example, Ace would come up and tell me a joke, and then come by a little later and try to tell me the same joke again, but not remember how it went. Peter also suffered from memory loss, but the difference between the two has been striking. There would often be moments of clarity on Peter's part when we were on tour. He would tell me how he had gone wrong, and that this would be the first day of the rest of his life. He was tired of fighting his demons. He was tired of trying to show the world that he was a badass. He had been through 2 divorces that broke him spiritually and financially. He would speak very openly about wanting to change, and for some of the tour it was fun being around him. He would aid us in trying to keep Ace on the straight and narrow, saying things to Ace like, "You're a father, what's your daughter gonna say? I've been through the same stuff you've been through, it doesn't work. I don't want to go back to playing clubs, do you? It's time to straighten up." Unfortunately, it didn't work. Later on, when Peter's insecurities kicked in and he saw that he had made millions of dollars from just one tour, he started to wonder why he hadn't made more, despite the fact that the contract he signed outlined exactly what, when, and how everyone was to be paid. When he got like that, he would team up with Ace, and he'd be back to the Peter who had tortured me from the beginning. I guess I shouldn't have been surprised when this happened. Peter was just too unpredictable. I had witnessed his unpredictability firsthand throughout our years together. For example, Peter once shot my television set. While he was trying to separate from his first wife, I let him use my apartment so he could hide out with his playmate of the month, whom he seemed crazy about. I gave him the key and the run of the house. When I came back, I noticed that my 6-foot television screen seemed bigger and newer. It was. It was now a 7-foot television screen. When I looked behind the screen, I saw that part of the wall had been repainted. I found out that Peter and this woman, who had become his second wife, had been watching TV. Peter, for some reason, had his .357 revolver out. When an actor's face appeared on the screen and he heard his girlfriend had known the actor, he shot the screen. It wasn't the first time he'd done something stupid with a gun. When the band was on hiatus over the holidays, during Peter's first marriage, he shot the tree out from under his first wife as she decorated it. Ace and Peter may have tended toward this kind of behavior, but their weaknesses were exacerbated by their management. Both of them were still managed by George Sewitt, and he was, more and more in my opinion, acting the role of the band's management. I had in no uncertain terms told him not to do this. When we were playing the MTV Music Awards at the foot of the Brooklyn Bridge, I saw George giving directions to some New York policemen. I went over to him and said, "George, stop it." Unfortunately, I think he was under the direction of Ace, who kept telling him to do whatever he could to promote him rather than the band. At the end of the day, Sewitt almost got Ace and Peter into a nightmarish financial situation. I urged Ace to get some help. Although I'm not a financial advisor, in my opinion, it looked like a sinkhole and would leave Ace holding the bag. When he did get some outside advice, they told him that it was the worst deal they'd ever seen. Ace and Peter parted company with Sewitt, and they soon sued each other. There are still claims pending.